welcome back to the Marketing is Missions podcast. I'm Mandy, and this is...
Hey, I'm Jeff. Today's about anxiety, depression, and distractions, and kind of what all three are, especially in ministry, like when you're working in ministry, and how to kind of handle that, or at least how Mandy and I have handled that in our lives. The thing I wanted to start off with was, what are some distractions working in ministry that you feel I faced every day, or that you faced every day, that took you away from what you thought God was calling us to do?
That is a very loaded question that I was not prepared for.
It was. Okay, so I'll give you an example.
Thank you.
Okay.
I would appreciate that.
That would be great. Good way to start off, right? I would have my regular office schedule. It was weird because every single day I would walk into the office and not have a clue what I was going to be doing that day. It could be caring for a family that just had a tragedy happen to them. Maybe not even a tragedy, just something happened over the weekend. They got sick and I needed to reach out and give them a call. It could be preparing the next week's lesson or social media posts. My biggest thing is, what game do we play this week?
That was not your strong suit.
That was not my strong suit. I never really care. I was never a game person in youth group either. How do I structure all of this? And the feeling of overwhelm that hit me anytime I thought, well, if any one of these things goes wrong, it could seriously do some damage to the program, to a person. Like, I'm impacting spiritual lives, and I took that very seriously. But then I put way too much weight on every task associated with the ministry, to where if something popped up that was not on my schedule for that day, it brought this overwhelming sense of fear in my life of, if I don't follow through with this, something or someone's going to fall apart because of it. And maybe not immediately, but the process would start. So it was that whole business principle of focus on the important, not the urgent. But in ministry, there's this culture that everything is important and everything is urgent. And so I got really confused. I had zero lack of clarity on what my actual priorities were on a day-to-day basis. And that just kept building and building and building to the point where it was true anxiety.
I don't think I really struggled with that when I was in ministry. But my positions were a little bit different. Mine were a little bit more, you have a routine every day, because I was either doing the music for the choir and the orchestra, or I was doing finance, or I was in the front office. And while the front office has a lot of go with the flow, because you don't know who's coming in the door and you don't know who's calling and that kind of stuff, I had things that I needed to get done, and then I would have other things that came up but could usually work through. My anxiety, I don't think was influenced by my ministry. I think it ended up being influenced more by home triggers, but I still had to deal with the complications of my anxiety while working in ministry.
Well, that's a good perspective too, because a lot of my initial introduction to a lot of these topics happened because of work pressures that impacted my personal life. And now that you've said that, that makes a ton of sense, where a lot of your introduction to these topics was personal pressures, personal fears, personal anxieties that you had to try not to let impact your your professional life. Mm-hmm. Both are true in everybody's life. I think triggers, you said that word. We've both kind of shared that word a lot. That is going to be kind of a big focus of this. What are some of the triggers for you that sent you down a spiral that you didn't know if you could get out of?
After Kinley was born, I started noticing in myself feelings of helplessness and feelings that I just knew I wasn't myself. Little things started getting to me, like Logan disobeying or messes being made in the house. It's just started really, really frustrating me when that usually was not something that would make me upset. I think when we noticed that I was to a point where I needed help was when I had my first panic attack. I, in general, do not do well with throw up. No, I don't handle that. I will handle poopy diapers all day, every day. I cannot handle throw up. That's just me. But it got to the point where the thought of our kids getting sick just threw me. And I think the night my sister, they were over and they had mentioned like the kids had gotten sick or someone had gotten sick. My mind just spiraled. I had a full-blown panic attack. I couldn't breathe properly. I was dizzy. I felt nauseous myself. Like it was rough. And at that point, I realized something is physically wrong with me and I need some help because I can't keep living my life like this. And I don't have a ton of other triggers that we've really narrowed down, but that throwing up or like the possibility of throwing up, I guess, has definitely been the biggest one.
Our family's health is a very important thing when we're on the road a lot. We've had an experience where all of us got the stomach bug while we were traveling, and to this day is a core memory that we'd rather not have. It's always that fear of what if we get sick and we're a million miles away from home. So I know, especially with the stress of packing for you, and getting everything organized, you already have a list of things in your mind that you need to accomplish. And then Logan and Kinley will come home from Awana or Sunday school in the middle of winter, and we're packing up, and they'll be like, oh, somebody threw up in class today, or somebody's home because they have a stomach bug. And I know like that just sends you to that almost breaking point.
Yeah.
Because it's like we have all of these things planned out, and that could be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
And then there was a point in time where Kinley, when she was hungry, she would just go, my belly hurts, my tummy hurts. And I would like when I tell you, I would just have a pit in my stomach, or I would just look at her and be like, are you hungry? Please say that you're hungry. And she would go, yeah. I'm like, don't say your stomach hurts. Like, just don't do that.
I mean, you grew up in houses when we were kids, and if you had a stomach ache, you didn't do what? You didn't eat. And then here's Kinley, my tummy hurts. And it's like, it's because you're hungry, sweetheart. And she would then eat a ton of stuff. And then we'd be like on edge for the next 4 hours. As your triggers progressed, your response to those triggers became one of my triggers.
Well, and so after I had my panic attack, I then got to the doctor and we talked through some stuff. They put me on some medication, which was needed.
And let's just say this right now, medication in and of itself is not bad. There are some times where your brain biologically needs some extra assistance. I've heard it said to just kind of close the gap at the bottom of the bucket and allow your brain to biologically fill back up with the chemicals and the neurons that it needs to be able to function in the way that it has to. And if you need medication to do that, whether that's for a short term, low dose, long term, whatever that case is, that's between you, God, and your PCP. Medicine has been a part of both of our stories.
Yep.
And we're not necessarily ashamed to say that, but at the same time, it's not the only thing. It's not the cure for anything. It just helps close that gap so that our relationship with God and our Bible reading and all of the other spiritual, emotional things that we need to be trusting in God for, we're more open and able to do with clarity.
They put me on the lowest dose possible, which was fine. And that helped me not have panic attacks. But then I started having anxiety migraine. And so anytime we would get ready to pack for a trip, sometimes it was like the day after where like a lot of stress getting ready, and then we got on the road, and then the next day I would get hit with a migraine. And these were not just like little migraines. They were like, I looked pale, I was nauseous, I couldn't function at all. Migraines.
Which means if we're a family of 4 and mama's down with a migraine, there's no other option. I got to step up and be Superman, right?
But you're also usually the one driving.
Yeah. Anytime she would even say, I've got a headache, I'd be like, oh no, I've got to do everything. I have to be super. And then I would like super stress myself out or psych myself up, build up all this adrenaline inside of me, which, by the way, is not healthy. It's not the way to live. You definitely don't live a long, prosperous, healthy life, especially spiritually, when you just pump yourself up with adrenaline like you're going on the baddest roller coaster every single time your wife says she has a headache.
So thankfully, with talking with my doctors, they upped my dose to the next lowest dose, but that helped tremendously, and I wasn't having I was having migraines, but not anxiety migraines, and so that was so much better.
The frequency of your migraines dwindled considerably.
Yes.
Didn't get rid of them, but...
No, we found the pattern to that, though, and then after having our lifestyle eating habit change, they've almost become non-existent, which is super awesome.
Which is super awesome, but also it's just like, why didn't we do this earlier? Anytime you do some sort of self-help thing or improve yourself, whether that's spiritually, physically, emotionally, and you finally see the benefits of just doing something with discipline for an extended period of time. So anxiety's been a part of our lives for, I would say, it's been a part of my life for a very long time. I had a lot of it in high school and college, but I didn't know what it was. Mm-hmm. I thought it was just my inability to focus on things. And it wasn't worry, but it was definitely this fear of what if I screw up. And my anxiety was based on my performance of what other people thought about me. That's where I struggled, was if I do this, what is this person going to think about me? Which is kind of weird because I also have a personality of I just don't care what you think about me. And I put that out a lot, but there were certain people in my life that I would always be trying to please without maybe them knowing it or even me knowing it consciously at the time. And it would always just stress me out to the point where I just wouldn't enjoy it. Everybody's like, Jeff, you've done so much, or you're doing a lot, but you don't look happy. Like, well, I wasn't at the time. I never really knew how to reward myself or take pride in the work that I was doing because I was always so hungry to get to the next step or to please the next person that I never thought about success, in quotes, you know what I mean? It was just kind of weird. So I'd always just stress myself out, and that was all through high school and college. And then
you met me, and I was like, I did an Edna mode on you.
You did. You
pull
Edna
yourself
mode.
Together. Be happy.
Edna moded me.
Edna
moded me. Whatever that is. Anyway, pull yourself together. And we had some moments where it was working, but I think up until our church transition time, I was really good at hiding my struggles to myself. Mm-hmm. I was really good. I'm a heck of a justifier.
In more ways than one.
And it's gotten us into all kinds of trouble. Not like bad trouble, but like big purchases and stuff like that. I'm pretty good at justifying certain things. We're
going to buy Fitbits. Oh, we walk out with Apple Watches. Okay.
Mostly because I sold the salesman. But anyway, still not a great reason to buy things. So I really did a good job of hiding my own struggles to myself. And Mandy would bring them up, and we'd sit down, have an honest conversation, and then just kind of come to the point where it's like, yeah, I see it, but I don't know if it's actually like the real thing. Yeah, I don't know if that's the real monster in the room, because there's like 3 or 4 other things that it could be. And a lot of that was just baloney.
That was really hard for me. I had been pointing things out. As the saying goes, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And when you're a spouse to someone who has anxiety or depression, you can point things out to them. You can show them where they might be struggling, but that doesn't mean that they're going to actually accept that, and that doesn't mean that they're going to want to change.
No. And I didn't want to change.
And I think some of it also was that you didn't see how the other stressors were causing you to have either more anxiety or more depression at that time.
My backstory came with a family history of anxiety and depression, but it also came with an arsenal of me studying psychology in college, in my head always having the right answers, or always being able to whisk away, again, the big scary monster with something else, because I wouldn't classify myself as clinical from the DSM because this, and this, or I haven't had it long enough. And
you didn't like that I could read you like a book.
Yeah, well, you were the only one. You, my mom, and like maybe 2 or 3 other people are the only ones that have actually ever truly read me to my core. I will say this, when I realized that I was truly in a depressive state. Now, praise God, I was never to a point where I was suicidal. I never had overarching thoughts of just complete give up in anything. I just wasn't myself. It was hard to navigate, because when you finally get to the point when you're ready to admit to yourself that something's not right, everything floods back. And the church transition happened to be the
straw that broke the camel's back.
Straw that broke the camel's back, to use the old saying. But then everything came back. A lot of unhealed hurt that I had just swept under the rug came back.
What if I had done this? What
ifs were really big. And I remember sitting in the parking lot before my first counseling session. Like, I had finally filled out the input form completely honestly. Can you use 2 adverbs in a row? I don't know. I just did. I had
Ask
filled
my mom.
I had filled it out, and I was like, wow. You know, it's weird when you actually fill out the counseling intake form and you're going, oh, snap, I'm really messed up. And I sat down with my counselor, and he's like, you've got some really high scores. We need to address some things. And I just remember sitting in the parking lot before all of that, just finally crying. Like, finally having the freedom in my heart to let my emotions go.
And you don't cry
I
very
really
often
don't.
at all.
And it's not that I necessarily like try to be a tough man and be like, men don't cry. I'm just not really wired emotionally to have that as my response.
Well, and usually when you do cry, you go hide from people, and then you cry.
Exactly.
And I go, why did you tell me? I would have been there for you. And you're like,
I don't need anybody to be there. It's time between me, my eyes, and God.
I will say, after you started counseling and they put you on some medication, there was a big change.
It was night and day.
Yes.
Not overnight.
No.
But in the time that it was supposed to take the medicine to work, it had done what it was supposed to have done. And that was... I even started to notice, I was like, oh, is this what this is supposed to feel like? Oh. And it wasn't anything new or exciting or mind-bogglingly amazing. It was just going, I messed up. And I'm not completely beating myself up over it.
Yeah, because any little thing that you would do wrong, you would just literally just tell me like, oh, I should have done this, and I'm so bad because I did this, and I did this, and I did, and I'm like, no, you're fine. It's okay. Everyone does little things here and there. It's fine.
Well, and it was funny because if you would if you were to look at my like Spotify playlists at that time in my life, it was two opposite Christian songs or like genres, right? It was a lot of angry Christian hip hop, rock, Skillet, NF, punch you in the face type music, or it was just like low key, cash, comforting praise and worship music. That was it. And I was like, man, even my music was a dead giveaway to what I was going through at the time. I either just wanted to be mad at the world, but pretend that I was not mad because it was Christian music, or I wanted to be comforted and just, oh, God is gracious, God is kind, God is merciful, God is love, all true things. I just wanted to focus on that, not my problems, which is a good thing until it's the thing that's making you avoid the problem that you're facing. It wasn't that I didn't have a spiritual life in those moments. It was that my spiritual life was very curated at the time of what I wanted or what I thought I needed, and 'twas not what I needed.
So that's a little bit about us, where we've been, how we've handled our journeys with, well, for me, only anxiety. For you, anxiety and depression.
I would say mine's almost backwards. Mine is like depressive tendencies with sometimes a true major depressive disorder that is clinical, that mindset then leads me into thoughts of anxiety.
Yeah. Where mine was just pure anxiety.
If you look at the DSM, which is like the standard for how things are diagnosed in mental health, my anxiety isn't textbook.
No.
And it's like other things cause an anxious reaction in me, but it's not truly life-changing, fear-gripping, I can't do something. Anxiety, anxious feelings definitely are part of it. Mental health obviously it's an incredibly important, complex, huge issue right now, especially in the ministry field. It's such a walking on eggshells type of topic, and it's getting, goodness gracious, it's getting so much better than it was even when I was in college 10 years ago. Truly taking the time with somebody else, truly taking that time to be self-reflective on what is getting at you is so important.
And I think you have to figure out who is going to be the right person to communicate with. Because if you're dealing with stressors or anxiety from people in your life, then you probably need to have a third-party person that is not involved in anything that you can just spill your guts to. And in our case, that was a certified Christian counselor.
Literally had no other third-party person that we could go to.
We had friends in other states, but it wasn't, we needed someone to be with us.
Yep. And even those friends in other states were still getting over us leaving them.
Right.
For this job that I was now transitioning out of. And the bad thinking fear in both of our minds were, oh, they were just going to say, I told you so. We really didn't even feel like that was a true, like, third party, completely uninvested side to talk things through. And again, that was probably fear doing a lot of the thinking for us.
I had to go through counseling through that transition because I needed someone to talk to and work through those things. But I did not have the anxiety and the depression through that. I just didn't know how to work through the emotions of the transition.
Because you were still staying in the office.
Yes.
I mean, you were...
So I had to work through, how do I still work with these people when I feel frustrated, when I feel angry, betrayed, different things like that. How do I work through that? And that Christian counselor was, I can't even describe how grateful I am that I was able to work through that. My anxiety came after that. That's when talking with you, talking with a friend at church, talking with my sister, I was able to work through, like, this is something that's serious and I need to get some help. I remember it was probably 3 or 4 months before my panic attack, I had turned to you and I said, I need help. I don't know what or how, but I need help.
You actually said the words, which was huge.
Yes, but at that point, you didn't even know how to help me or what I needed help with.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not too sure about this. But you had said that in the middle of a holiday season one year. That was an incredibly busy time for me professionally. Mm-hmm. It was incredibly busy and stressful for you personally and professionally as a mom. I wanted to say, but I don't think I ever did. I was like, I hear you. I just don't know how to help. And it was one of those things like you hear in marriage conferences or joking, like never just like help or never always help or fix the problem. I wasn't even on that boat. I was just like, I don't even know what questions to ask. Mm-hmm. And I don't usually have that opportunity in my life. Usually I'm pretty good with picking out and answering questions. I had no clue where to start. I was maxed out myself.
And I think because at that time we were both just so maxed out at work, I could tell I needed help, but I didn't understand where I needed help and how I needed help, but I knew I wasn't myself. And I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't figure it out. And you were so busy with everything else that you didn't have the time to really look into me, figure out what was happening. And it wasn't until I had that panic attack that we both went, oh,
yeah, that was the time.
That's what it was.
Well, not necessarily a lot like me, but the panic attack for you was kind of akin to the church transition for me. Mm. It was that thing that helped you understand and realize this is what it is, mm-hmm. and this is how serious it can be physically when I take it too far, right? Mm-hmm. You were displaying all of the symptoms of a panic attack. I'm glad I was there that night because you would have probably made the decision to go to the ER for other reasons because you had no real clue what was going on. And then on top of it, your brain works so overdrive trying to figure out the problem that you were psyching yourself out about what you were going through. And you were like going through the encyclopedia in your brain about what's wrong with you.
Am I dying? Do I have cancer?
Exactly. And it's like, stop. And then I was like, you're just having a panic attack right now. Not that I was trying to be like, it's okay, chill out. Like I wasn't like that at all. But it was like, no, okay, the best way to calm this down is let's work on your breathing, getting yourself out of the bad thoughts and just getting back to the status quo for your body so that your body can then calm your mind. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's when it clicked for me. It's like, oh, I don't know how to fix this still, but I at least have an idea of what's happening.
Oh, I need her to get help.
And yeah, this is something I can't help. It was good for us, and maybe that's an opportunity for you to learn when the right opportunity is for you to truly seek help. Obviously, it's as early as you can, but like Mandy said, you need to have that third party or that trusted person mm-hmm. to help you process some of those things.
And know that if you're feeling off, if you're not feeling like yourself, you know something's wrong, but you can't pinpoint it, it does not hurt to make an appointment with your primary care physician. Because honestly, I think if I had done that in December, I don't think I would have had a panic attack. Honestly, it took me to having a panic attack to really get my butt moving and getting help. If you feel like that, maybe talk to a couple different people too.
Yeah.
Reach out to those you are close with and really just explain to them what's going on in your life and how you feel, whether you're feeling helpless or whether you're feeling not like yourself. One of the things was like, I should not feel this uptight and angry with my kids because that's not me. Like Jeff will tell you, I'm one of the most patient people when it comes to my kids. It was to the point where I couldn't handle.
Mama had no chill.
And I'm like, this isn't me. I don't like being like this. I don't want to be like this. But I couldn't figure it out.
Mandy and I have kind of discussed our relationship with our own anxiety, depression. But a lot of those triggers that we have mm-hmm. have been started by what I like to call distractions. You know, I kind of shared the example of not knowing what to do every day and different things like that. I'm convinced that if I would have sat down and talked with somebody, that they would have coached me and allowed me to see a path on how to do certain things. You're able to catch what could roll into anxiety, what could roll into depression quickly if you just stop and go, what is stressing me out right now? What are not just stress triggers, but why is it stressing me out? What's the pressure point? What's the pain point that's really getting to me? And then is there a system? Is there a coach? Is there somebody that I can talk to that can help me through it now at the earliest stages so that it doesn't wind up becoming a cycle of anxiety? Not that everything happens this way, but a lot of times if you've never struggled with it before and now all of a sudden you're in your mid-20s to mid-30s and it's now a part of your life, there's probably some systems and some disciplines that you didn't put into place earlier in your life that you can still learn how to put in place in your life now. It's not going to heal it, it's not going to remove it, but it will help you be able to manage those feelings of stress more effectively. I had no healthy way of handling stress. I just buried it or removed it.
Yes. And neither of us were good at handling stress ever, really.
Or discipline.
Yeah, we're getting better now.
So much better now.
I think yours was also twofold because you had imaginary stress of thinking, what are other people going to think about me? Mm-hmm. That really had nothing.
Didn't really exist.
No, it didn't exist at all. And then you also had your physical, I have all this stuff to do and I don't know how to organize it and it's stressing me out because I don't know how to do what in what order. And I think you gained the experience on how to handle that when you were at Ashley Lay.
Yes.
I cannot stress enough how thankful I am that you learned those skills at Ashley Lay, because now the way that you handle working and missionary life, which is basically just throw your life into a laundry basket and shake it up and down.
It's a free for all.
That's our life. You're able to handle it so much better now because of those skills that you learned, and you've worked through those imaginary stresses of what other people will think. Now, we still have that occasionally because we are missionaries. We are going to other churches. Our whole life is based off of, what does this church think of us? Do they like us? Do they want to support the ministry that we're in? What do they think of our kids? And so we kind of have that, but we also keep reminding ourselves every time that we go out, it's not about us. It's about God and how God works in the people at that church. And if God wants them to support us, be partners with us, He's going to move in their hearts. And it's not about what we do or what we don't do. It's about God. And we both have been figuring out how to handle those situations. With it being the twofold, once you gained the knowledge and experience, you've been able to conquer those stressors. And your life has been so much better because of that. So sometimes it's hard to work through these things when you don't have the experience yet. You don't always know what kind of experience you're going to need when this happens. Like, you didn't know that you needed help in working out how to plan out your day until it got to the point where you were so stressed out.
It was too much. And that goes back to another thing. It felt like a false promise. The way certain things happened at the church, it was promised to me to have some mentorship and some one-on-one time with certain staff members to get that training.
Right.
And then just the way certain things happened at the church, that person's schedule got way filled up, and I was literally just the floundering kid on the side of the road that was just hired kind of thing. It was definitely what I thought was coming, never came, but I also never asked for it either. I never brought it back up because I thought, well, I understand they're busy, so I'll just strap up my bootlaces and
I'm low on the totem pole. I don't matter.
Yeah.
And that's all of the lies that you were also battling at that time.
Yep, brings up a good point, and we'll kind of land the plane with this, I think. In ministry specifically, there is such a tiered caste system. And I don't care if you have a church of one pastor and that's it, or you have a church where there's 30 people on staff. Mm-hmm. There is such a caste system of where your position falls in rank, and it's just kind of been put into our minds. Every one of those positions is important. God has gifted you with the ability to lead each of those positions and responsibilities, but no one is more important necessarily than the other, because God's wired us all different. Your music program might be excellent, and that reaches 5% of your congregation. Now, the preaching of God's word, we're not going to get into the spiritual principles of that, because obviously that needs to exist in a church setting. However, youth ministry might reach 10% of that. Everything you're doing in excellence for the Lord matters, but it only matters for certain people. And God can use who he wants, what he wants, where he wants, how he wants. And it doesn't have to include you. And if you can take that from humiliating to humbling, where you go, oh, God doesn't need me. That's true. Instead of God is using me. It's kind of the whole principle of I have to go to work this morning, or I get to go to work this morning. Mm-hmm. It's a choice that you have every day to get up and change your perspective, change your mindset, spiritually and emotionally, about how you view certain things. And that is not a hack. It's not a tip. It's just the one thing that I've learned myself of going, how can I set myself best to hear from God today what he wants me to hear for my life? Mm-hmm. And how can I set myself up best to bring him the most honor and glory? And that's really just by sitting down, opening up his word, and going, I choose today to want to let God work through me. Not, oh, God's going to use me as a servant, or God's going to use me as his tool today, or all of those different things. Which, by the way, I hate that phrase, and that's another subject. It's, no, God is going to be able to use me today because I'm a ding-dong. And he's going to be able to use some of that for his honor, his glory, and it's going to be for my good. That doesn't cure anxiety, depression, or distractions, but it helps put things in perspective, and perspective and clarity are everything when it comes to mental health.